Hello, denizens. Here we go. Once again, former network executive reaction TV guide fall preview 1974 edition. These things have started to consume an enormous amount of my time. I mean, making these videos, but damn, they are fun to do. And research. And by research, I mean scratching those parts of my cerebral cortex for memories long ago forgotten. I'd also like to thank all of you denizens who are telling me you really like me doing these things. So I'll keep doing them as long as you keep liking them. It encourages me to keep doing them. My wife tells everyone to not encourage me. Too late. Let's get started. I've added a new feature to my fall preview TV guide feature, famous historical events that took place in the year of the guide. It's always nice to put these new shows into the context of their time. In 1974, President Richard Nixon lowered the U.S. speed limit to 55 miles per hour. Oh, and he ignored a subpoena for some Watergate thing. Anyway, in Australia, the Brisbane River flooded its banks. The Symbionese Liberation Army kidnapped Patty Hearst. Swedish pop band ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest. During 10-cent beer night, inebriated Cleveland Indian fans started a riot, causing the game to be forfeited to the Texas Rangers. In August, President Richard Nixon announced his resignation from the office of the presidency, probably because of the outrage for lowering the speed limit. The Ramones played their first show in New York at CBGB's. Now that we're done with that, let's get to the good stuff. TV Guide Fall Preview 1974.
Changes. All in the Family started shooting without Archie Bunker because of a disagreement Carol O'Connor had over a beer commercial. I only read them, folks. I don't make this shit up. Lyle Wagner is leaving the Carol Burnett Show. Happy Days has added Misty Rowe as a sexy waitress. Rhoda leaves the Mary Tyler Moore Show to do Rhoda. Dear God, Lee Merriweather, that is one freakishly large cross. Paul Sand in Friends and Lovers, CBS. Shy, unassuming Robert Dreyfuss is a Boston-based symphony double bass player who is constantly falling in love. It never seems to work out because he's shy and generally says the wrong things at the wrong time. He hangs out with his older, brash brother Charlie and his wife Janice, starring Paul Sand, Michael Pataki, Penny Marshall, and Steve Landesberg. Lasted half a season.
Sample episode. Paul's life is disrupted when Fred's father arrives for a visit, a famed violin virtuoso. He is condescending to those around him, including his own son. The show was produced by James Brooks and Alan Burns of MTM. I remember the show got a lot of network care and feeding. Sands was considered a rising talent. They prepped his character on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. They had some of the best writers on board. CBS sandwiched Friends and Lovers between All in the Family and Mary Tyler Moore on Saturday. But the show tanked. Best laid plans, as they say. The second fastest MTM show ever to be canceled. The first fastest will come later in this video. It was replaced by The Jeffersons, a huge hit that lasted 10 years.
Nakia ABC. Nakia Parker is a Native American serving as a deputy to Sam Jericho in New Mexico. Choosing an old truck or a horse over a police vehicle, he also combines tribal traditions with modern crime techniques. Starring Robert Forster, canceled after half a season.
Sample episode. An American Indian deputy sheriff is caught in the middle of a community dispute when the tribe tries to save an historic mission from a housing developer. I'm including this show because one of the trends I've noticed after reviewing 10 or so of these fall previews is that the notion that the networks were all white all the time is not entirely correct. More efforts were made than one might have recalled. Of course, Forster was not Native American, and his dialogue was so bad I won't even sample it for you here. Also, many of these attempts at diversification were essentially cannon fodder against massively successful shows in the schedule. For instance, Nakia was up against CBS's The Carol Burnett Show. Don't get me wrong, I'm not taking the networks off the hook. At least they tried. Well, that's a weak excuse. While the networks did have success with Black American programming, attempts at Indigenous, Latino, Asian programming always shocked me with their absence.
The New Land, ABC. I'm only mentioning this Walton's clone because of Bonnie Bedelia and Kurt Russell. It was killed off after only 6 episodes. Once again, cannon fodder up against All in the Family. New Land's 7.9 rating could not compete with All in the Family's 29.3. ABC was clearly trying for some family-oriented counter-programming. The Sonny Comedy Review, ABC. Can Sonny make it without Cher? Sonny Bono's solo effort at a variety show after the successful pairing with former wife Cher, a typical mix of musical performances by guests with skits, starring Sonny Bono. Guests included Terry Garr, Clifton Davis, James Brolin, Cloris Leachman, Michael Jackson, and Joey Heatherton. Canceled after 12 episodes.
I guess Sonny couldn't make it without Cher.
Born Free, NBC. Based on the movie starring Diana Muldaur and Gary Collins. Lasted half a season before being devoured.
Another show I'm only including in my review because it came in all ablaze and based on the hit, heartwarming movie of the same name and starred 2 very charismatic actors, and it still died. Born Free was up against The Rookies on ABC, a big hit, and Gunsmoke, a waning favorite on CBS.
Rhoda, CBS. Rhoda Morgenstern leaves her Mary Tyler Moore family and heads back to her hometown of New York City. She moves in with her kid sister Brenda, is nagged by her mother Ida, and hooks up with demolition contractor Joe Girard. Starring Valerie Harper, Julie Kavner, David Groh, Nancy Walker, and of course, Lorenzo Music as Carlton the Doorman. Lasted 5 tumultuous seasons.
Sample episode. Rhoda is surprised when a publisher contacts her about a book she wrote years ago. The book is a humorous look at being overweight. The deal is too good to be true. This was a very funny show in the best MTM tradition, but even without hindsight, I had this notion that there were issues around Valerie Harper's ego. The show was a huge hit. Then, in season 3, Rhoda and Joe separated and the show immediately tanked in the ratings. But from my perspective, it wasn't any less funny. Just the great audience out there hated them separating.
Get Christy Love, ABC. Christy Love is a beautiful and charming black woman who also happens to be a skilled undercover operative with the Los Angeles Police Department. Her smarts and skills often come in handy when posing as a prostitute, jewel thief, etc., to bring down the bad guys. Starring Teresa Graves and other people. Lasted 1 season.
Sample episode. In order to take down the city's biggest and most powerful narcotics boss, Christy goes undercover as a heroin dealer. Of course. Why wouldn't a TV Guide description of a 1974 cop show featuring a black woman mention that at some point she'll be posing as a prostitute? Sometimes going through these old TV guides is just damned embarrassing. Curiously, Get Christy Love wasn't a lost cause show. It was a wide open field Wednesday night at 10 p.m. up against all rookie shows. The Manhunter on CBS and Petrocelli on NBC. And the reason for Get Christy Love's cancellation actually might have been more to do with star Teresa Graves' conversion to Jehovah's Witness after the pilot and her objection to the suggestive content of the show. Never hire an actor who starts leaving Watchtower pamphlets around the dressing rooms.
Petrocelli NBC. Tony Petrocelli is an Italian-American Harvard-educated lawyer who gave up the big money and frenetic pace of the major metropolitan life to instead practice in a sleepy city in the American Southwest. He and his wife Maggie live in a trailer in the country while waiting for their new house to be built. Starring Barry Newman, Susan Howard, and Albert Salmi. Lasted 2 seasons.
Italian New York City lawyer in sleepy Arizona town is a great bull in a china shop premise. In the battle of Wednesday night, Petrocelli was the winner, but just by a year.
Little House on the Prairie, NBC. The story of space insect aliens that inhabit prairie farmers. I'm just kidding. Based on the Little House books by Laura Ingalls Wilder, as she recalled her childhood in the post-Civil War Midwest. Starring Melissa Gilbert, Michael Landon, Karen Grassley, Rachel Lindsay Greenbush, Sidney Greenbush, Melissa Sue Anderson, and a shed ton of others. Lasted 9 seasons.
No need for a sample episode. Just think of winds turning farms into dust. It was a very popular show that showcased Michael Landon's ability to write, direct, and act. It was a bit milquetoast for me. I wasn't the audience.
That's My Mama, ABC. Clifton likes being a barber in Washington, D.C., where he works in the business started by his father. He also enjoys being single, but his widowed mama, Eloise, has other ideas and wants him settled like his sister Tracy and her conservative husband Leonard. Starring Clifton Davis, Teresa Merritt, Ted Lang, and Teddy Wilson. Lasted 1.5 seasons.
Sample episode. Clifton calls for an honesty day, during which no one in the family can tell a lie for 24 hours. In the beginning, it's refreshing, but things get ugly when the honesty gets brutal. That's My Mama made a game try of it, but it was up against Little House in the same time slot.
Sons and Daughters, CBS. Nothing to see here. Lasted 10 episodes. Another drive-by casualty of Little House. The Manhunter, CBS. Set during the Depression, David Barrett, a farmer, works as a bounty hunter to help his family. Starring Ken Howard, lasted 1 season, lost out to Petrocelli. Lucas Tanner, NBC. Lucas Tanner changes careers after a grievous personal tragedy, taking up teaching in suburban St. Louis. He approaches it in an idealistic fashion, rebelling against the rules that keep him from connecting to his students. Starring David Hartman, Rosemary Murphy. Lasted 1 season. Next. Paper Moon, ABC. The Adventures of Moses Prairie, a con artist selling Bibles to credulous widows, and Addie Loggins, a young girl, as they travel the roads of America during the time of the Great Depression in the 1930s, based on the movie of the same name, starring Christopher Conley and Jodie Foster. Lasted 13 episodes. Apparently charming. Next. Movin On, NBC. A crusty old veteran big-rig trucker teams up with a college-educated youngster to haul cargo across the country, starring Claude Akins and Frank Converse. Lasted 2 seasons.
The most memorable aspect of this show to me was the theme song, sung by Merle Haggard. Apparently, it was President Gerald Ford's favorite TV show. The stuff you learn.
Harry O, ABC. Harry Orwell is a world-weary private investigator who was forced to leave the San Diego Police Department after a bullet became lodged near his spine. He lives on the beach, and when he's not working on cases, he spends his time fixing up his boat. Starring David Janssen.
Janssen was a big star after 4 seasons of The Fugitive. Harry O was a pleasant show. I only watched it because my dad liked it. Harry O, Rockford Files, and Mannix were my dad's 3 favorite shows to fall asleep during.
Rockford Files NBC. James Garner stars as the offbeat Jim Rockford, an ex-con turned private investigator who would rather fish than fight, but whose instinct on closed cases is more golden than his classic Pontiac Firebird. From his mobile home in Malibu, this wisecracking private eye chases down seemingly long-dead clues in the sun-baked streets and seamy alleys of Los Angeles. Starring James Garner, Noah Beery Jr., Joe Santos, Louis Delgado, Stuart Margolin, and Gretchen Corbett. Lasted 6 years.
One of the all-time best TV shows ever. It was essentially Brett Maverick as a modern detective. The show was remembered for its opening theme by Mike Post as much as anything else. A final bit of trivia. Co-writer, co-producer David Chase went on to write, of course, The Sopranos. It makes me think about a lot of the bad TV we're seeing now. Maybe it's because so few are getting this kind of apprenticeship.
Chico and the Man NBC. Energetic Chico wants to form a partnership with cynical Ed Brown in the old man's garage. Ed refuses to fit in with the changing East LA neighborhood. Chico's efforts bring in customers, and the crabby Ed softens towards Chico. Starring Jack Albertson, Freddie Prinz, Scatman Crothers, and Della Reese. Lasted 4 seasons.
Sample episode. Ed gets the wrong impression about what Chico and his girlfriend were doing in the van. I didn't watch this show. I didn't like this show. I didn't like Jack Albertson. And I didn't think Prinz was particularly funny. Still, when Freddie took his life at 22 years of age in the 3rd season, it was very tragic. In season 4, they tastelessly replaced Freddie with a 12-year-old character, Raoul. Prince's death caused many to ask what was the responsibility of the producer and the network when someone has problems with depression. Apparently, nothing.
Planet of the Apes CBS. A group of astronauts travel in time and become marooned on a planet. Unbeknownst to them, they are actually on future Earth. The astronauts encounter an advanced civilization run by apes, but supported by enslaved human workers. Starring Roddy McDowall, Ron Harper, James Naughton, and Mark Lennard. Canceled after half a season.
I loved this show. It had no chance against Sanford and Son and Chico and the Man. Was it counter-programming or CBS just throwing a show away? It was a huge hit in the UK.
Policewoman NBC follows Sergeant Pepper Anderson, LAPD's top undercover cop. A member of the criminal conspiracy unit, Pepper works the wild side of the street, where she poses as everything from a gangster's mole to a streetwalker to a prison inmate. Starring Angie Dickinson, Earl Holliman, Charles Deerkop, and Ed Bernard. Lasted 4 seasons.
Did you notice that the show description was shockingly similar to that of Christy Love's? Do women cops always have to go undercover as hookers? Whenever I watched this show, all I could think about was the Hairspray budget.
The Texas Wheelers ABC. Earthy comedy about 4 motherless Wheeler children and their lovable but cantankerous father, Zach. With Zach avoiding work, Truckee leads the clan with Doobie, Boo, and TJ. Starring Jack Elam, Gary Busey, Mark Hamill, Karen Obadlear, and Tony Becker. Lasted 8 episodes.
Yes, This DOA vehicle starred Mark Hamill and Gary Busey. Another MTM failure. Did not help that it was up against the Rockford Files. Just think, if this was a huge success, Mark Hamill would never have been in Star Wars. Of course, Kathleen Kennedy doesn't want Mark in Star Wars now.
The Night Stalker ABC. Carl Kolchak is a reporter for Chicago's independent news service and a trouble magnet for situations involving the supernatural. Kolchak investigates vampires, werewolves, zombies, and all manner of legendary creatures, always trying to convince his skeptical editor, Tony Vincenzo, that the stories weren't products of Kolchak's own imagination. Starring Darren McGavin and Simon Oakland. Lasted 1 season.
This was a great show that I was looking forward to, especially after its first 2 standalone movies ABC made. It was a major influence on Chris Carter and his X-Files, to no one's surprise. It was actually Darren McGavin who ended the series because he didn't like the scripts and was exhausted spending too much time rewriting them. It also didn't help that ABC put it on Fridays at 10 p.m., which at the time was considered the graveyard.
Kodiak starring Clint Walker was canceled after 2 episodes. Never mind.
So, that's it for 1974. What an amazing collection of major hits along with so many failures. But some of the failures were actually pretty interesting and should have been given a second season. That's what I think. But that's network TV, folks. I hope this was educational and entertaining. What were your favorite or most memorable shows from 1974? I look forward to your comments below. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.